Hello, everybody, and welcome to a early edition of the Horsehead Weekly here for Week 12, as I will be going away for Thanksgiving, and I won't be able to make you a video on Turkey Day, so I decided I'd make it a little bit early, so we're going to not have anything really involving waivers this week, but other than that, let's just hop into it, and we're going to start, as we always do, with last week. I'm going to recap what went down, and it was a week of upsets. I'm pretty sure that if you asked me to pick all 6 games, I would have had James over myself, Tyler over Nick, Doug over Jerry. I would have had Dave over Mike, Matt M over Jess, and Matt S over Malcolm. And yet here we are in Bizarro World, where myself, Nick, Jerry, Mike, Jess, and Malcolm all took down in an underdog effort for the ages, really, which kind of sent the standings into a bit of a mess. As you probably saw last week, Matt M, I believe he had the bye. He's now out in the NFC because that's just how it went. Mike has a tiebreaker over him right now, as does Jess, so that means that Matt M is currently on the outside looking in. He's sitting down there with Nick, who is, fighting for his life still, but has a chance. I mean, he just has to leapfrog Jess and Matt M and get into that wild card spot. So that's what's going on over on the right side of the screen. Back over to the left, we have Doug, even with that loss, maintaining his position, his dominant position on top. But Jerry, with that, closes in and makes it so that Doug has to sweat a little bit. He isn't able to just put his feet up on his desk and hang out for 2 weeks before coming out and having to actually do something. He has to win. He has to basically win 2 games because he doesn't know what Jerry's going to do. And in the other division, Malcolm, being the only person to win a game in that division over the last 2 weeks, he manages to move to 5-6 and in the lead for the division, putting him in, I think, a pretty good position. Not great, but he is a game up, so he has that to give. So just to go over the tiebreakers again, because I did allude to playoff things, but this is just what they are again for divisions and then for wildcards and buys. Moving on to the playoff scenarios, myself and Dave were eliminated last week. Very sad times, so we will not be going in. Other people who can be eliminated this week, James is eliminated with a loss, Matt S eliminated with a loss, and Nick eliminated with a loss. So we could have 5 people out with 2 people sitting on the bubble at the end of this week. Yeah, that's going to be crazy. And over on the other side, we have Doug and Jerry both clinching a postseason berth, and Tyler being able to clinch with a win this week. Now for the upper bracket buys, Tyler clinches with a win and a just loss. As the way the tiebreakers and everything work out for him, that'll put him a game ahead of either of his pursuers from the other division, and I believe he has tiebreakers on both of them. So with a win and a just loss, he's in. With a loss and then a loss to Jess the following week, and some bad luck in other matchups, he winds up in the wild card. So we'll see how that goes. Or I think he can actually still not make it. That's also a possibility. For the buys, Doug clinches with any combination of 2 wins and or Jerry losses, same as last week. And Jerry earns a bye with no more than 1 more loss or Doug win, and he also has to win on other tiebreakers. Over in the wild cards, Jerry has at least a wild card berth. That's old. I did not fix that. Jerry has already clinched at least a wild card berth. So good for Jerry. Moving on, Mike, just to explain what's going on over in the NFC with all the tiebreakers and everything, Mike has breakers over Jess, Tyler has breakers over Mike, and Nick has tiebreakers over Matt M. I believe Matt M and Mike still play once more. and Mike currently has the Breakers over Matt M. But if Matt M wins, then they're drawn in their division. I believe they play either this week or next week. So still a lot to play for, a lot going on over in the NFC, with the AFC basically being down to can Malcolm keep back whoever wins the wins between James and Matt S. Continuing over on the NFC while I'm talking about it, Tyler, I already said he clinches with a win and a just loss. He also will get the bye at that point. Jess has to win out, and Tyler has to lose out for her to win the division. And Nick still has a chance to win the division. He has to win out. Tyler has to lose out. That's it. And then I think he goes to tiebreakers. And if he can have the better tiebreakers at that point, which I believe he would, yeah, he would have the better tiebreakers at that point. So Nick still has a path of victory. He was counting himself out a week or two ago, but now he's still in it. He has the ability to make it to the playoffs. Over on the other side, we have Matt M. All he has to do is win out at this point, and he gets it. Good for him. Mike, he gets it if he wins this week. Week 13 does not matter. If he wins this week, he takes the division. That simple. But he can also lose this week, and then have him win the following week, and Matt M lose the following week in the last week of the regular season. So 2 different ways for them to make it. This week's going to be a big match for them. Over in the AFC, we have Malcolm winning out. Malcolm wins this week if he just wins, and Matt S loses. That's all he has to do when he's in. James, if he wins out, he can win out and take everything. And Matt S has to win out and have James lose out, and have Malcolm lose to Doug in order for him to make it. So it's a little bit harder for Matt S with Malcolm and James both holding on to their own destiny. Matt S definitely needing a lot of help. Moving over to the other division, we have over in the Skull House. I'm out of it already, as has already been said. So then Doug can clinch the way we already talked about him. Jerry, we already talked about how he works, and the way the Breakers are, they will go to Breakers rather if it is if Jerry wins one more game than Doug. So it's going to be tough. It's going to be very interesting how this one works out, because this is also for a bye. But let's move on to the Eliminator. And yes, alas, the Eliminator has ended. And who do we find on top but Tyler? So congratulations, Tyler. You went 6 weeks without getting a strike. And then I probably started scaring yourself a little bit there, having some hiccups as the noose tightened around everybody and people started falling like flies. But you managed to put up really good numbers last week in order to keep yourself up. And then the following week, you managed to continue to survive by beating out Doug in what I have to say was very dramatic fashion. Doug almost caught you. If that one touchdown went to somebody other than to Baldwin, we would be congratulating Doug. But yeah, so congratulations to Tyler. You have won the Eliminator, and when payouts are paid out, then you will be able to collect your $50 for winning. So let's continue to move on to the incentives. Speaking of money getting paid out, we have Doug continuing to lead and add on to his lead for quarterbacks. That's beginning to look like a runaway, but I mean, anything can happen if Wilson goes out and Brady starts playing really well. Who knows with that? Over in running backs, Tyler again padding his lead. The rich get richer. It's a very bad week for running backs, but not for Tyler. He put up 37, putting a nice bit of padding between him and Matt S., which is about a week. So Tyler has to have a really bad week. Matt has a really great week. Then they're fighting again. But for now, I think Tyler is beginning to slowly pull away from Matt S. Over at the wide receivers, we have quite the shakeup, as Mike just had an insanely good week at wide receivers, leapfrogging both Jerry and myself to put himself into number one. I, on the other hand, had a very poor week, so I dropped a ton behind Jerry, putting myself to 17.9 back from Mike. So it's still, I believe, a three-horse race as it was last week, where I was like, oh, maybe Mike's slipping, who knows? But if he puts up another week like that, he's going to be looking really good. Uh, Over at tight end, man, that it was a really rough week for tight end, as you can see here. Only 3 people put up double digits, and only 2 more putting more than 6 points on the board. Just a terrible, terrible week for tight ends. But on the other hand, that meant that Matt S. got to gain some ground on Tyler and just began to enter back into the conversation of maybe being able to catch up to Tyler, but who really knows? I don't. Moving on, we have the IDPs. James and Matt S. continue to brawl for defensive line, with Matt S. nipping into his lead a little bit, as they both leave Jerry and Mike a little bit farther behind. Jerry at linebacker puts up huge numbers to move himself into the number 1 spot, leapfrogging Dave M. With Nick keeping pace, and that wasn't sorted properly. So who else is in this race? Apparently Jess is also in the race. So looks like those top 4 are just a little bit out of order, but those top 4 are definitely the people who are still in it. And Tyler can put up a couple big weeks maybe and close the gap, but I feel like it's down to those 4 at the top. And finally, for defensive back, Jerry ended up putting up fine numbers this week, but I had a monster game from Landon Collins, and I was able to put myself back into contention, closing that gap and putting myself within 5. With Nick still hanging out 13 back, definitely being in contention. So, as I said earlier, the waiver wire, we're just going to ignore that because this video was made before the waivers. And this is the fab as of Tuesday, so tomorrow when you're spending money, these numbers are going to go down because that's how spending money works. Rest of the season schedules. Now, rest of the season schedules have been updated, and as you can see, Tyler has it pretty rough. He has, I believe it's Dave and then Jess moving forward. That's going to be tough for him. Those are 2 teams that are very hot right now. So good luck to him on that. He also has to contend. So he has those 2 going on. Meanwhile, you have Jess, who has a pretty easy schedule. She has to only deal with, 2 teams that aren't as good. She has to deal with Nick this week, and then the following week it's somebody from the other division. I don't remember who. But so that's tough for him because he's got to look out for that. And then looking over at the Malcolm, James, Matt S. Well, they all have very easy schedules. However, they also have very poor last 3 weeks. So it's going to be interesting to see which of them can take these easier matchups and capitalize on them, and which ones of them are going to let these easy matchups fall through their fingers and wind up in 7th place. And then if you look at it from a win-loss perspective, not necessarily the last 3 weeks, but how teams have been doing all throughout the year, I have a very tough schedule because I play 2 of the best teams in the league. Literally, like actually the top 2 win-loss records in the league. And on the other end, you have Jerry, who gets 2 people who are under 500. So it's interesting last 2 weeks. This is the last time we'll do rest of the season schedules because it's just at that point next week it comes down to you play other person. So that's how that's going to go. Oh, what's this? What are you thankful for? Oh, that's right. Okay, so I asked everybody. Well, I say everyone. I missed like 1 or 2 people, so I'm sorry if I didn't get to you. I was busy at work today. I wasn't able to get to everybody and ask them what they're thankful for this fantasy season. But here are some of the responses. So what is everyone thankful for? Oh, we're going to start off with Tyler. And he's thankful he has one of the best teams in fantasy football because his team is sick. It's disgusting how good it is. And yeah, so that's a good thing to be thankful for, just having a really good team. It's kind of generic, but they can all be winners. Moving on, we have James. And James is thankful that in many cultures, 7 is a lucky number. I don't know why he said that. That's not really a fantasy football thing or really even a thing to be thankful about, but I mean, that good for you, James. I guess 7 is a lucky number to some people, and it just keeps popping up in their life. Um, so cool. Whatever. Moving on, we have his brother Matt, and he is thankful that if he doesn't make the fantasy playoffs, at least one of his brothers will. That's really sweet. Referring to James and Malcolm, saying that as long as if he doesn't make the playoffs, at least one of you two will. So that's really nice. Will be eliminated from the. Oh wait, hold on. So if he doesn't make the playoffs, at least one of his brothers will be eliminated from the playoffs in the first week. So you're just banking on the Schadenfreude because you saw that you had a rough road to make it to the playoffs. So that's pretty clever, pretty clever. And myself, I'm happy that I get to be the kingmaker and decide who from my conference makes the playoffs because I knocked James down a little bit last week, and if I you know beat Doug and lose to Jerry, I could be the one team who decides which of those two gets the bye, and I'm cool with that. Who else we have? Oh, we have Mike. Mike is thankful that David Johnson was overrated. Anyways, garbage rocket out. Sounds like he just like threw up some deuces there. Not a lot to be thankful for apparently, just a lot of bitterness, which is understandable. I mean, he's had a rough season that he's rebounded from, but yeah. So just a little bitter there, Mike. Little bitter. That's true love. Jess is thankful for Tyler's intense modesty, his stunning good looks, and his supreme athleticism. I Oh wait, that second line I think I was supposed to not put in there. I just kind of copy and pasted it quick. Moving on. We have Dave. Dave said that he's thankful that Matt could still make the playoffs in order to get better Christmas presents than last year. I mean that would help if your brother does win a fantasy championship. That is going to mean some cash coming in, and he can make you better get you better presents. So yeah, hey, that's a good way to look at it. Even if you don't make money this year, Dave, at least your brother might, and he'll buy you something with it. I think that's canon at this point. So Matt, with your winnings, you have to buy something nice for Dave. There we go. It is decided. And finally, for this pain, we have Jerry, and he's thankful he has one more week before he plays me because he's shook, he's scared, he has seen how great my team is going to be in the playoffs, and he's just glad he gets a week to beat up on someone a little easier before he ends up having to cruise into a terrible matchup in week 13 that'll decide if he gets the bye or not. And finally, we have these four, which starts with Malcolm, and he is thankful that his division is trash and he got to screw over Tyler with trade discussions. Again, that's some fire right there, Malcolm. I'm sorry. I probably should have looked these over before I just posted them on the internet for everyone to see what everyone else thought. But I mean, hey, I guess that's what it is when you just ask someone for their opinion and totally actually do that. Matt is thankful that the Eagles will go further in the playoffs than he will. I mean, you both could lose in the first round. That's possible. But I guess, yeah. I mean, that is nice though. Yeah, you're spreading the love because if your team does good, you feel good. But if the Eagles do good, then the entire city of Philadelphia gets to throw batteries at Santa, or something like that. I'm not entirely sure how that goes. Maybe like Cupid, because maybe the season goes till Valentine's Day this year. Not entirely sure. Regardless, these completely real quotes are getting a little weird here at the end. Nick is thankful that he only has 9 more months before he can make trades again. The kid's got an itch and he needs to scratch it, guys. I think we might need to get a dynasty league going just so that in like late March, Nick can send people trade requests. He'll send a trade request for like, oh, can I get Ezekiel Elliott for you know, Matthew Stafford because Zeke's not really that good right now, and he can do his thing year round. I feel like we should. That's the least we can do for him. And finally, we have Doug, and Doug is thankful that his brother Mark brought him into this dirt level league, going to be rolling in it come the new year. Thanks for the money, suckers. Well, at least he learned how to smack talk real quick. I mean, that's definitely something. Um, so now that we know what everyone is thankful for, let's move on to this week's Power Rankings, the Thanksgiving edition. And we're starting off by taking a look at how everyone scored over the last 3 weeks to see how everyone compares. And from best to worst, we have really 5 tiers. I don't know if you can call Jerry a tier on his own, but some pretty clear delineation as to how some teams are doing. And I just thought it was kind of neat to take a look at because the difference between 8th and 6th is a point, and the difference between 3rd and 5th is a point, and the difference, so there's not a lot of difference. I mean, hell, it's 4.5 points between 8th and 3rd. So when you see your last 3 rankings, this should put in a little bit of context for you. And in C class, we have your drunk uncle, the guy who just kind of comes in and does drunk uncle things. Because that's how the holidays go. And we're starting off with number 12 with everyone's favorite drunk uncle, Malcolm. Last week he was 12th. He remains at 12th. Even though he got a win, his team still didn't look great. Yeah, he still got. Apparently, I didn't update the rosters. That was a thing Mark was supposed to do yesterday. Or no, this morning. Okay, so I'm just going to look at your rosters from last week and just kind of move on. So Dede Westbrook did end up playing, and he played decent. You have Josh Gordon, who might come back soon. Ty Montgomery's probably the guy, and you got McCaffrey coming off a bye. Like, you got a lot of good things going on for you in the upcoming week. However, you had Keenan Allen go off last week. I don't think you can really count on that, as I don't think you can count on Tyler Lockett going out there and putting up the type of numbers he did last week. I don't know, dude. I'm just still not really liking your team, and you don't like your team either. And if you don't even have confidence in your team and you're currently sitting in the playoffs, then I'm going to put you at 12th. You do currently sit 10th in the last 3 in the bottom tier, but, hey, man, good luck going to the playoffs as the 12th power ranking team. That would be pretty fun to watch, actually. Moving on to number 11, we have James. James, after losing last week, fell out of the playoff position that he was in. He still can win out and make the playoffs, so he still completely controls his own destiny. But he does have the worst last 3 games average. And who does he have coming up? He had ASJ and Jermaine Kearse as his bye week guys. That's not really inspiring confidence. I mean, Alex Smith looks like he decided that his hot streak is over and he's going to start playing like trash again this last weekend. Le'Veon Bell, even though his team put up a ton of points, really wasn't that involved. I think he only put up 17. Kenyon Drake looks like he's not going to be the guy anymore. You do have a couple bright spots, though. You're not all doom and gloom yet. You do have Devontae Adams, who seems to be just absolutely clicking out there in Green Bay, is the one bright spot in their offense. And you also have Dion Lewis. And Dion Lewis is playing incredibly well right now. He is the running back that New England is using for their running downs. And with them playing Miami this week, I think that there's going to be a lot of running out the clock for them. So, yeah, I mean, you got some good stuff going on in your team, but you also have people like, Nelson Agholor, who did not look that great as of late, I don't think. Vernon Davis, who, now that Reed's coming back, is going to fall away again. Yeah, you're looking a little bit rough, a little bit shaky, and, best of luck to you, but I'm not really loving your team right now. Which brings me to my team, which, speaking of teams that aren't, especially being loved, Um, I mean, I keep myself at 10th, even though I am 11th in the last three. I still think that my team has a lot of potential to blow up over the next couple of weeks. Alex Collins is starting to look like he's the main guy. He even caught a couple balls, even though they had Woodhead back. Now, that could have been because it was a shake the rust off game, but who really knows with that. Not pitchered here, I also have Devontae Booker to go with Damian Williams and J.D. McKissick as players who I can kind of fill into that flex role if I'm not really liking my matchups elsewhere. So I have a lot of, you know, low end RB2s that I can play around with, or high RB3s, or flexes, or stuff in that range. But still not really liking my team. Maybe I'll end up getting another win for the rest of the season, but I'm really kind of trying to focus all my energy on those last 3 weeks because I at least want to make it out of here with making it into that scrum and putting up a good showing there. And finally, not finally. Next, we have the B class, which is Turkey. I do not enjoy Turkey, but so that's why it's all the way down here in the B class. And we have Mike, who is one Jive Turkey. After last week's showing, he absolutely crushed it. He was at 11th, and I had to move him up. I need to see it again, though, out of Ben Roethlisberger and Antonio Brown. Yes, Antonio Brown is great. I'm not going to sit here and say that he isn't have the potential to put up 40 points in any given week. However, I want to see Ben Roethlisberger and him click one more game before I shoot you up the rankings. You also got a little bit lucky with Latavius Murray being the guy when I think that he's not the best player, but maybe his just ankle got right, and now he's just able to play really well. I don't really know. Robert Woods, yeah, he's done. So your flex is going to have to go back to somebody else. Maybe I guess it's Gore or Mac, depending on who you like that given week. But yeah, I need to see some of these players playing well again. I need to see Ralph, like basically all the way up and down your board. The only player who I really like week in and week out is I don't. So I need to see one of them, continue to push forward. Because yes, Antonio Brown is a top talent, but I need to see him putting up, 20 plus numbers every week for him to be good enough that he's worthy of you moving all the way up. Because having one stud doesn't make you great. Having a couple studs that are doing great things, that's what makes you great and move up the list. But you are out of the basement, so congratulations on 9th. Moving on up to 8th, we have Nick. He was 8th last week. He's 8th this week. His last 3 games actually have put him in that second to top tier, in 4th, because his team's been playing pretty decently. I mean, there are some players that had some issues where Sterling Shepard was he was ill, so you ended up having to start, I believe, Rod Smith as your flex, which it was okay. I mean, I feel like he's going to be, better some games than others, but Morris is definitely the guy there. But yeah, no, I really. Oh, you have Bilal Powell too, so you're going to be putting him in. So you'll have like Howard, Mixon, Powell, with Cook, Shepard, Parker. Yeah, no, your team is fine. It's one of those things where again, I need you to show me that Kirk Cousins can do it for another week, and I also want to see Sterling Shepard do it for another week. We only saw him really have one great week after coming off of his injury, and that was great. But then he was ill, so I need to be shown that he is healthy and he's doing well in order for him to you to continue to move up. Or even to move up at all, rather. But for right now, you're on the outside looking in at 8th. In 7th, we have Matt S., currently 6th in the last 3. Seems like a bit of a fall, 3rd to 7th, even though he's in that like middle tier where he's around everybody else. But I just really didn't like some of the performances I saw last week. Again, it's a little bit hard because I can't look at your scores from last week that you had because I don't have the right stuff and information here, but you were relying a lot on Danny Woodhead coming back, and he's kind of not looked great. Dak Prescott had a couple of really rough weeks the last couple of weeks, so I'm not entirely sure what's going on with that. Kelvin Benjamin hurt himself. Apparently, it's not serious, so don't go dropping him. He might be back as early as next week, but maybe even this week. But it is something to just kind of be like a little like, ooh, that's a little spooky. Um, but you do have other great things happening for you. Julio Jones looks like Julio Jones again. That offense is beginning to click under their. I don't know what happened, but they're really starting to click again. You have the number one tight end in fantasy with Travis Kelce. I mean, you have a lot of good things going for you as well. That's why I didn't drop you any further. I couldn't convince myself to put you behind Nick, but I could convince myself that you should sit here in the B tier and just kind of be, just kind of handling yourself and trying to figure out what you're doing moving forward because you have good pieces with like Hyde and Gurley. That's a good 1-2 punch and a couple other things, but I don't know. I just really need to see your team bounce back, I guess, or something. I don't know. There's something about your team. It's bugging me. So moving on, we have Class 8, which is the sides. You go to Thanksgiving dinner and you have all this turkey and everything laying here. No one cares about that. I always go for the sides at least. And the first one we have is Jerry. Jerry moves up a spot, even though he is a little bit lower in the last three rankings. He's kind of in a purgatory between the bottom tier and the second to bottom tier, so I kind of made him a tier on his own over ninth place. Yeah, the talent is there on your team. You can't look up and down this list and say that there's not a ton of talent present. Samaje Perine had a really good week. Devontae Freeman is playing really well when he's healthy. He hasn't been lately, so who knows what's going to happen with that. You have a set of studs at your IDPs. I don't know, but then I don't know. Again, maybe it's just my biases, but I just need to see something from you for you to move back up. You moved up one spot, which is good, but I need to see something else because just looking at like names like Jared Goff and Jamal Williams, Cameron Brate, who isn't that good anymore, as your starters just makes me not happy. Yeah, you had Perine Freeman, so you can fix some of those spots really easily, and maybe you can go out and stream tight ends. But I don't know, dude. I just need to see more. Again, I'm kind of trying to play off of memory because I don't have last week's stats in front of me, so I'm sorry, but I'm just gonna move on to Doug, who I don't need to see last week's stats to know that Chris Thompson went down. I could hear your shrieks from up here in Albany. Yeah, no, you had a rough time there, dude. That's why I knocked you down one position because I think you have the depth to make it work. I think you have the ability to move, like you can just move Miller up, and then you can start either Lee or, I mean, Jordy's been kind of crap, but Funches has been really good. You have Greg Olsen coming back now, and Evan Ingram, so if you want to put one of them in the flex, it's possible that that's just the right play. I mean, I like a lot of the things you got going on, but when you lose somebody who's, a top 10 guy at the running back position, I had to move you down. So I'm real curious to see how you're going to do this week, mostly because I play you, and I really want to beat you. If nothing else, then I can, save some face on the way out by taking out both you and Jerry. So yeah. So that's Doug. And finally, we have the whole reason we have the holiday football. And starting that off, we have Matt M. Last week he was number one, and he slid 3 spots because he just had a couple of players who just did not play well. Most of them being Philadelphia players. I don't know what happened last week, but the Philadelphia offense apparently came off of the bye flat. They did not look good at all, and I really think that, it might have just been a get-right game for them where they just kind of went into the bye a little cocky and getting punched in the face and playing the way that they did. While I believe they won, they didn't look good doing it. Again, I'm not 100% sure on this. I could be entirely wrong, and if I am, then ignore me. Look at the pretty number next to Matt's name and move on. But yeah, and your last 3 games haven't been great either. Yes, that includes one where 3 of your studs didn't play, but you know that's how it goes sometimes. So yeah, so that's what I'm looking at with you, Matt. And then moving on, we have Tyler, who fell down 1 spot. Not as bad of a fall as Matt, but still 1 spot. And it puts you, uh, you know, in a fine spot still. Your team is still absolutely ridiculous. You're still in a position where I don't believe you have to start somebody who is outside of the top 10 at their position. Um, I don't know if Fournette played last week. He might have been hurt. If he was hurt, then that's one thing. You also have like Eckler, who I mean, in the event of an emergency, you could always start him too because apparently he's going to get touches and make them work. But yeah, no, you have quite the team. And you have I don't know how like Inman did, but I know Cook isn't good anymore. Um, I think he had a good week last week, but I'm not going to trust him at all. I don't know. I just you're doing good things. I'm realizing that I don't really know what's going on with a lot of this right now because I'm kind of missing my cheats that I normally use. But we have Dave. Dave, he was one of those 2 people who last week I said, hey, if they play really well this week, they're going to shoot up. And that's what Dave did. His team played phenomenally. Yes, he needed Drew Brees and Alvin Kamara to kind of go off at the end of the game to do as well as it is, as well as Michael Thomas. He's got the New Orleans stack. But yeah, no, he played fantastic. It was wonderful. Your team's really clicking right now, and yeah, so good for you, dude. Yes, you have some issues still. I don't really know if I can trust more than one of your running backs, but if you continue to put up the kind of if you continue to put up the kind of points that you're putting up lately, then you know what? That's fine. You don't really need it. You got Corey Coleman back now. You got a flex with Landry Thomas and him if Coleman's going to continue playing as well as he is, um, at least until maybe Gordon gets back. But I think Gordon's going to come back, be mediocre, and Coleman's going to steal the show, setting up next year for people to, be down a little bit on Gordon. But I think Gordon's going to be great next year. But that's just me. Anyways, I don't know. You just have, if you had a second great running back, then you'd be an absolutely insane team right now with a ton of momentum moving forward. But you're not as insane as Jess, who I had as last 3 weeks ago, and then she decided that, no, I want all my players to play well now. And they have been. She has over 130-point average over the last 3 weeks. That includes, most of her games just being actually phenomenal. And, yeah, Brady's playing really well. Coleman's taking huge advantage of what's going on. Marshawn Lynch is, again, somebody who I don't really like, but you got Alfred Morris, and he's been playing really well. So you don't really even have to rely on him anymore. And then Thielen's insane. DT's probably coming back soon, right? He's going to play well again. If that offense, at this point, I think they want to start switching gears because they're out of it, so maybe they'll start playing a little bit more loose, a little bit more free, and then I'll get DT a little bit more looks because they'll just kind of be like, let's open up the playbook a little bit and see what we got to mess with. Jimmy Graham, of course, he looked fantastic this weekend. But yeah, your team right now, I'm not in love with it, but when it comes to what have you done for me lately, you have got to be the number 1 team. And if you gave me an option right now where you said you can switch with any team in the league, who do you want? God, I would hate it, but I would switch with you, and I would switch with you. I would have to, because your team is just the hottest team right now. It's doing fantastic. It's just wonderful. So, congratulations to Jess. You have risen up the ranks and have returned to the position of goddess. The position I bestowed upon you, I believe, week 12 of last year as well. A little bit of symmetry throughout the seasons. And, yeah, and now, as you did last year, you're going to put together a couple good games here at the end of the season, make the playoffs, and we'll see what happens from there. In this week's matchups, I mean, there's a lot going on. It's all divisional or conference games, so there's a lot of games to look out for. But the game that I picked is Mike versus Matty M, because this is a game that will likely decide who wins that division. Because as you saw earlier, if Mike wins, he just wins the division outright. It's over. Everyone else can pack it in. They're not winning the division. And that puts Matty M in a terrible position trying to make it to the playoffs, where I don't think it's impossible for him, but it's super unlikely, especially if like Nick and Jess get some wins. However, if Matt wins, then Mike has to hope that he wins, Matt loses, and then some fun stuff happens on that last week. So that's what we got going on for this week. I've talked for too much, and I'm going to let you guys go. So happy Thanksgiving to everybody. Be safe this holiday, and I'll see you guys next week.